The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Kyle Whittingham announced that Cam Rising is not on Utah's roster.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes.
The news that's been a long time in the making, it seemed like, but Cam Rising is no longer on Utah's roster. Kyle Whittingham said that him and Cam have talked a few times, and he'll let Cam himself divulge his plan, but he's no longer on our roster. We'll let him announce what his plans are when he wants to. My reaction is I'm not shocked by this. The Devin Dampier addition, the other quarterback moves, it didn't make sense with his injury history for Cam to return to Utah. Wish him nothing but the best, an absolute legend, but I felt like this was in both parties' best interest, Moose.
I absolutely agree. You look at Coach Beck coming in, he looks for what's called a Thorderback, is what he calls it. Because Thor had just come out and he had Taysom Hill, and he's like, I need quarterbacks that play like this. And he's looked for that everywhere he goes. Guys that are dual threat, that can get around the pocket, that can buy time for the offensive line, that make everything go. And you look at him, he'd go empty a lot last year because Devin Dampier was basically a running back. And so he's like 5 wide receivers, maybe 2 tight ends, 3 receivers, and let our quarterback be our running back and see what we can do. And it confuses defenses. It does a lot of things. But Cam Rising doesn't fit that mold at this point in his career. He's a 64-year-old man. Just kidding. But he's up there. He's in his 8th year of playing. A lot of guys that he came out with are like Trevor Lawrence. You see dudes that were freshmen the same time he was, and it's like these guys are on their 2nd contract. Cam, most likely, what I hope for him is that he finds an offense that fits his style, goes, plays, gets as far in the playoffs as possible, and then goes out into the NFL. He needs that extra year to get out of the injury bug cycle. And if he can do that, we're going to be in a good situation. But it's oil and water right now. It just doesn't mix.
It didn't for the last couple of years. I actually want to get back to Cam in one moment. You said something I find very interesting, and I do agree with at times that Devin Dampier they just utilized his running more than anything. I do feel confident in Devin Dampier's ability to lead Utah back to a Big 12 contender status this coming year. You talked about his running ability. How much faith do you have in Devin Dampier's arm for Utah football?
You know what? His arm is very interesting. He had 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He was learning. He's a young kid. I mean, he's not on his 8th, 9th year. He was learning a lot, and he was doing it with a cast that doesn't look like Utah's. Mm-hmm. I mean, you put roster to roster against each other. New Mexico wasn't Utah, but I love that they're reworking the Utah offense. I love what Coach Beck says. He's like, we're looking for guys we can trust. I don't care if it's tight ends. I don't care if it's wide receivers. I don't care if it's running backs. I don't care if it's a quarterback. I want guys I can trust out there. And that's going to make Utah's offense unlock to a whole new level because it's not just forcing the 12 personnel or the 13 personnel or the 14 personnel. It's saying, hey, who's our best guy out here that we can trust? Let's get him the ball. And it's been really interesting because Coach Beck has put tight ends in the NFL. He's put receivers in the NFL. He's put quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's put linemen in the NFL. So you're sitting there and you're like, what is he going to do? And no one knows. And that's what makes it so exciting to watch a Beck offense because he pulls from everywhere. He's super smart and he adjusts to the roster. And I think in this day and age, that changes everything. But Devin Dampier as a thrower, I think is really good. But he's not going to have to run as much when you've got Fano and you've got Lomu protecting the bookends. And I think we'll figure out the interior this time around. But Devin Dampier, if he does get some A-gap pressure, he's fast enough, he's slick enough to run outside, find his target, and deliver a strike, and he doesn't have to force it as much anymore. At New Mexico, he had to put up 50 points a game to win. With this Utah defense, you don't have to force the ball. It's okay going and letting the punter punt. As long as the ball hits the foot of a kicker or punter at the end of a series, I'm considering it a win because Utah's defense is going to be that good this next year.
Yeah, I'm excited about what the defense can do. Really excited about what Devin Dampier can do too. And guy only sacked 4 times last year, to your point, Moose. So he's got the ability to get out of pressure, and that is something that'll be big for Utah. Getting back to Cam Rising, we touched on it a little bit, and I like the analogy you used of water and oil. Just unfortunately for Cam too, the best ability a quarterback can have is availability, and Cam Rising, simply put, was just not available enough. The injuries plagued him. You couldn't move forward with him as your starting quarterback, in my opinion, because if you bring him in, if you say, oh, Cam Rising's our guy, then the best quarterbacks in the country are not going to want to come to your program because they're going to be like, why would I be a backup? Versus you can land a guy like Devin Dampier because Dampier sees a path to start, doesn't have to deal with the quarterback controversy of, oh, if Cam Rising is healthy, will he be the guy? Questions remain too, just after so many continued injuries. Like, will Cam ever be the quarterback he was in 2022? I don't know that. And I'd be curious to see what his announcement is. He chose not to enter the fall or the winter portal. That leads me to think he's going to declare for the NFL draft, but nothing has been made official yet. But a lot of love for Cam Rising, as we said at the end of the day too, Moose, and definitely just wild that this is how it ends up played out. I thought Cam was going to be the one to announce it. He still gets to be that one, but by waiting, he kind of forced Kyle Whittingham's hand to have to make a statement about it.
Yeah, he did, and maybe he's ready to go to the NFL, give it that shot and go. And if he is, kudos to him. Maybe he's like, I want to get into coaching. There's so many things, because as of right now, his injury record, it's not a draftable position at this point. So maybe he at quarterback too, like there's only in all reality, teams take 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks, maybe 3. And so it's a losing proposition if they're not invested in you and you're just a fringe draftable guy. And so there's too many question marks right now for him. I think the best thing for him to do would be go play another year if he's allowed it, or get on with his life and start coaching or doing whatever makes him happy.
Yeah, I would agree. If I was advising Cam, I would say probably go into coaching. I would if he could get back to health, would love to see him try and chase an NFL spot. UDFA at best, as you and I both agree, Moose, and even at that, like I said, could be tough. Maybe he would even have to go to a USFL and try to work his way up from there, just because of what the injuries have been, and that's where maybe a college team will be interested in trying to bring him on, as he is a guy, if he can stay healthy, who's accomplished a lot compared to what most college quarterbacks have. So we'll keep an eye on Cam Rising, but at the moment too, and we'll do an episode once he finally makes his statement about just his legacy and the impact he's had on the Utah football program. But as Kyle Whittingham said, Cam Rising is officially no longer on the Utah football roster.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Impossible, right? Well, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 300 smackaroos in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The Rams crushed the Vikings, but aren't getting any respect as they head into the matchup with the Eagles. I tell you, FanDuel has Philly favored by 6.5 points. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Dominate Mississippi State, the number 15th ranked team in the country. Auburn doesn't have Janai Broome. It doesn't matter. Welcome into the special live edition of Locked on Auburn. I'm Zach Blackerby. He is Daryl Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend. What we saw tonight was incredible. We've seen Auburn win Maui. We've seen them go to Houston and beat Houston. But Daryl, what they did tonight, to me, up to this point this season, this very impressive season so far, this was the most impressive thing I've seen so far for this team.
Absolutely. Hands down, because there's a lot of different factors, but you've touched on them. Oh, we're doing a little switch. I saw the finger go up. I got a little concerned. Love it. That's exactly what we need to do. We need to boog.
Let's go.
I'm running out of adjectives to describe this team, and I will say this is the most impressive win for a couple reasons. Number one, you do it without your best player. With a minute left to go in the game, your walk-ons are in against the number 15 team in the country. That right there speaks volumes. And the third thing that makes me feel really, really good about this win and why it's so impressive, there was a little bit of that trend when Auburn got up 26 and they let Mississippi State get it to 13. You figure, okay, this is not good. This is a trend. Auburn's got to clean this up. And they get it back up to 24 or 26 within 2 or 3 minutes. Answer that and close out the game by winning by 22. That, to me, is almost just as important as what the final score was.
It's just they keep finding ways to impress you. Every single time, it's like, okay, well, if they do this, that'd be great. And it's just they keep finding ways to do. And they don't just do it. They just pass every test you give them with flying colors. What was the narrative going into this? Okay, obviously no Janai Broome. Mississippi State, a very physical team. Chaney Johnson, let's see if you can do it. Chad Baker-Mazara, let's see if you can do it. And Chad scored 17 in the first half. Chaney scored 12 or 13 in the first half?
It was 18 for Chad Baker-Mazara, 13 for Chaney. They had 31 of the 46 Auburn points. And then you figure, okay, in the second half, that trend can't continue. So Kelly, Pettiford, and Denver pick up the slack and completely shift the narrative in the second half and carry the water. That's why this team is so – and even Dillon had a nice second half. That's why this team is so good and so dangerous. The other narrative, Zach, was can Dillon and Chaney play disciplined basketball enough to stay out of foul trouble because your bench is a little shorter? And Dylan Cardwell had 1 foul at halftime.
Yeah.
That was now he only
finished with 2 on the game.
Finished with 2. I get it. He didn't have 18 points, but his presence on the floor for 20 plus minutes is very important defensively, rim rattling dunks, bringing the house down. He is your spiritual leader of this team. He's your captain, in my opinion. You got to have him on the floor. Him and Chaney adjusted their game, did what they had to do to stay on the floor, and the result is a 22-point boat racing bleep whipping is what it is. B to A was what happened tonight.
No kidding. And it just seemed like everybody who played had their moments, right? Chad with a hot start, Chaney with the hot start, Tahad Pettiford with one of the best dunks of the year, the alley-oop to Dillon for from half court, where then, which definitely I think the game was already over, but it certainly felt like a dagger. And then the broadcast crew zooms in on the Mississippi State coach, and he just looked dead inside, just a total demoralizing opportunity. Because if you're Mississippi State, let's think about this from the Mississippi State point of view for a second. They're the number 15 team in the country. They're going on the road to face the new number 1 ranked team without their best player. They had a great opportunity to make a statement.
You got a target on your back when you're number 1 in the country. The last thing you want to do, Zach, is when you get ranked number 1 in the country, the very next night is get beat. That's, to me, that's a bad omen. That's a bad thing. And that Mississippi State, as good as they've played this year, it's very difficult for them to lose 2 games in a row. So for them to come into Auburn without Auburn's best player, Auburn with the bullseye on their back, number 1 team in the country, all of the stars were aligning because Mississippi State and Chris Jans, let's make no mistake about this, okay? He is a very good coach that gives Auburn fits. He just does. Defensive. Auburn goes into the hump last year and gets what the game was in the 40s or the 50s. It was awful. It was like 1952 basketball. I thought there was a peach basket up there. And they absolutely did what they had to do from a schematic standpoint. He's the same coach that almost upset Auburn in the first round of the 2019 NCAA tournament. He has Auburn's number a little bit and he's a really good coach. So for Auburn to do this tonight without their best player, with a guy that gives them problems, speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. You said something, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's a generational type basketball team right now. They are. Now, whatever happens in March is going to define this. We don't hang banners at Auburn for stuff that happens in January, despite what other fan bases think. You don't hang banners for being ranked number one in the AP poll, okay? But
Sure.
what they're doing right now bodes well for March. Because they can beat you in a variety of ways with a variety of personnel. And I mean, they're 16-1. We can focus on tonight.
And up to this point, the toughest schedule in the country. And you have one loss, and it's a close road loss against Duke, who's right there behind you in the rankings.
I absolutely think that being 4-0 in this conference, to start out 4-0, to play the way you did in your non-conference, to survive a couple of lackluster performances in the second half of Texas and the first half of South Carolina. But make no mistake, this is what's so great about this team. When Auburn took that 19-point lead at the end of the first half, they were plus 29 in two halves of basketball. The second half of South Carolina, the first half of this game, plus 29. That's how you answer a couple of lackluster halves. Second half against Texas, first half against South Carolina. You get it right, you right the ship, and you go and be a plus 29 without your best player. That plus 29 was without Janai Broome, both halves almost. I can't even fathom it really, but it does speak to 8 seniors and the depth on this team. And
like you could have told me this was going to happen. I would have been like, okay, cool. Like everything has to go your way. And like certain guys got hot or whatever, but it didn't really feel like everything went Auburn's way. It just felt like they were just way better than Mississippi State from start to finish.
I'll tell you this. I wouldn't have believed Auburn was going to win this game by 22 had Broome played. Like if you told me last week Broome doesn't get hurt, Auburn plays South Carolina, they come back home to play Mississippi State, I'm happy with a 12-point win with Broome, because that's how much I respect what Mississippi State has done to this point in the season. So to do that, to be up 26 and win by, again, I'm going to repeat it for effect, kind of like the Boog hat is effect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Auburn had its walk-ons in with a minute left to go in a conference game against the number 15 team in the country.
Without your best player. Without the best player in college basketball.
This one did feel like the most complete performance as far as most important. Because you can go to Maui preseason and you can win with the way Broome was playing, and you can go to Houston, but you are in conference against a team that's 15th in the country without your best player, and you put together that kind of performance. To me, it's the most impressive and the most important win of the season.
It means a lot for sure. And I'm seeing national folks say like the best team in college basketball, it's not close. And I don't really know what the argument against it is at this point.
You emphatically answered any questions that anyone may have by putting you at number one in the AP poll yesterday, because you come out the next night against, again, the 15th ranked team of the country without your best player and win by 22. So you answered that narrative. If there was anybody, whatever. I mean, 60 of the 62 votes, okay, Duke got a vote for number one, and I think so did Florida. And I would suspect the Florida voter probably has a condo in Gainesville somewhere. And that's pretty impressive to get 60 of the 62 votes. I mean, how do you – now, you got to take care of business Saturday in a very, very which turned out to be a tough game in Georgia with the way they're playing on the road. But what Auburn did now, you enjoy it tonight. You go ahead and you take – it was a punctuation mark type game is what it was.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Ole Miss just finished off a 74-64 victory over the Alabama Crimson Tide. It was a defensive clinic. It was absolutely amazing. And if I can just say this, Malik Dia is a grown man. 21 points, 19 rebounds. He was the best player on the court. You were playing against a top 5 team, and Malik Dia was the best player on the court. I thought I had seen for the last couple of days. I think that Malik Dia has turned into the alpha on this team. I think that Malik Dia was becoming a special player. And lo and behold, he's turning into an NBA player right before our eyes. He is dominating games. He is such a handful to deal with. This Ole Miss team is 4-0. 4-0 on the season into the SEC. Road game against Mississippi State this weekend. This we talked about all week and all season. This was a race to 8 in the SEC. Now it's at the point where 8 might just happen. That's there. They're doing what they need to do. If this continues, this might be a race to 12. This might be a race to 14 because this Ole Miss basketball team that played tonight is good enough to win the entire freaking SEC. This team defensively is absolutely special. We talked about the no middle defense, and Tim Thomas comes on the show every week. I'll interview him tomorrow. We're going to put the show up on Friday. So we'll talk about this game a little bit on Friday. But Chris Beard and his no middle defense completely befuddled Alabama. They made livings off of giant skip passes for 3-point shots, and they were really good at getting open looks. But every time they tried the giant skip pass, there was an Ole Miss player sitting right there to where they were completely befuddled. You couldn't drive. They completely forced them out of the middle. Talk about Mark Adams coming in of the no middle defense fame, one of Chris Beard's original assistants at Texas Tech. This Ole Miss basketball team is special, is really good. And we thought about at the beginning of the season that, okay, let's just go there, try to get to 8. This is a tournament team. I believe this is a tournament team. Win the game against Georgia. We don't know how good Georgia is, but again, that Georgia game, Ole Miss started out slow, eked into the game at halftime, second half dominated the game. Did that against Georgia. Fine, fair enough. Went up to Arkansas, same script. Slow start, get back into the game, second half completely dominate the game. Third game, LSU, same thing. Slow start, get to halftime, second half, dominate the game. Now you're going on the road to number 4 ranked Alabama. The best team that Ole Miss has played this entire season, if you want to go by rankings. Somewhat of a slow start. They did not shoot the ball particularly well, although the defense was there from the very beginning in this game. This was 40 minutes of defense from Chris Beard and the Ole Miss Rebels, and it was absolutely fantastic. Alabama was up by, I think, 4 at halftime. Second half, Ole Miss completely dominated the game. Again, same script every single week. The second half of the game, Ole Miss is absolutely taking teams apart. And they're playing old-style basketball with mid-range jumpers and things like that. This is absolutely fantastic and fun to see. I'm getting pretty fired up. I'm starting to get in. I was a student at Ole Miss in 97. Whenever they played Temple in the NCAA tournament, the next year I was up there. So this is kind of reminding me when Ole Miss kind of got that going during that time frame. You know, the Valpo year and the year that Ole Miss were Keith Carter and all that playing. This is kind of starting to feel like that. I think that was back-to-back SEC West championships. But this Ole Miss team can win the SEC. The team that played tonight can beat anybody in the conference. I don't care if it's Auburn. I don't care if it's Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, whoever's in front of Ole Miss. The team that played tonight, Ole Miss can win. That's the way it is. And if Ole Miss is in a game rebounding, if you do not absolutely crush Ole Miss rebounding the ball, Ole Miss is going to beat you. That is what we're finding out. Whenever you cannot dominate the offensive boards, when you can't get second chance points, Ole Miss will beat you. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where we're playing. It doesn't matter anything like that. This was an absolutely fantastic game where Ole Miss just absolutely whipped Alabama's ass. Beat them up and down the floor. Alabama tried some threes. They went on some runs. There was that weird technical foul that got called where the SEC office tried to save Alabama and give them a 4-point play. They still only got 2 points because they missed the free throws. But Ole Miss was able to pull away against everybody. Everybody they've played has been a close game at halftime, and the second half, Ole Miss is absolutely dominated. All right, so let's look at the box score a little bit of this game and do a little house cleaning. This is a game where, like I said, Malik Dia absolutely took over, and we'll talk about that. But shooting-wise, Ole Miss did not shoot 40% for the game. Now, they did not turn the ball over, and they rebounded the heck out of it, and they played the best defense that I can remember since Rob Evans was calling things on Ole Miss's roster. But 38% was not ideal. 6 of 21 for three, a big one from Sean Petula, a big one from Juju Murray that allowed the lead to get extended. That was huge, but there was timely threes, but not consistent. Rebound, they had 37. They did have 21 fouls, including some ticky-tack stuff, if we're going to be honest. Alabama shot 42.6%. Ole Miss did a great job of cutting them off from the basket. They were 5 of 20 from three. They had 21 turnovers. The turnovers are Alabama's fault. Ole Miss forced them, but Alabama is one of the most undisciplined, sloppy basketball teams that I've seen in quite some time. They had 39 rebounds. They did crash the glass. They had 16 fouls. Now, if you look individually, Malik Dia, 23 points, 19 rebounds. Yes, you heard that correctly, including 4 offensive rebounds, but he had 15 defensive rebounds. We talked about pretty much consistently for the last couple of days that it was important to keep Alabama off the offensive glass and make them a one-and-done trip down the court. That it happened. Now, Matthew Morello had 11. I thought this was a game that he needed 20. That didn't happen. And if you look at my prediction, I actually predicted Alabama to win the game, and that obviously didn't happen. There was a big Big 12 from Sean Padula. He had 5 rebounds, 3 steals, and 4 assists. Juju Murray had 5 assists and a steal as well. If you look at Alabama, they only had 2 players in double figures. Ole Miss had 3. And when you look at what happened in this ball game, it's absolutely mind-numbingly cool. Like I said, we're going to go to your comments pretty early in just a second, but we do want to talk about this a little bit before we got started. The main thing was Malik Dia. Malik Dia, 23 and 19. He almost had a 20-20 game in basketball. We were waiting on him to have a double-double game, and he almost goes 20-20 whenever he has his first big game like that, and he was the best player on the court, period. There was no other player as good as Malik Dia on this court. Not Grant Nelson, not Mark Sears, not any of them. Malik Dia was the best player on the basketball court. When you have a Sean Padula, when you have a Matthew Morrell, and so many different players that can score the basketball, so many players that are turning into run stoppers, you have a chance that the other team can't ever sprint out. I talked on my show this week that the scary thing about this Alabama team is you could be playing really well and be up like 26-25 at the under 8 timeout in the first half. And then by the under 4 timeout, you're down by 15 points. This team can score points in bunches, and Ole Miss did an excellent job of preventing that tonight. This was a masterclass by Chris Beard. This was a masterclass by Ole Miss basketball. This is probably the greatest win, if you want to take a top 5 win on the road, in Ole Miss basketball history. I hate to be overly hyperbolic about it, but that's just the truth. When you never have beaten a top 5 team on the road and you do that, that is the hardest victory to get. So it's got to be up the list. Now, there's NCAA tournament wins. There was a shot against Notre Dame by Jason Harrison in, I think, 2001, the Sweet 16 year. All of that big wins. I'm not poo-pooing them at all. But whenever you win a game on the road against a top 5 opponent, that hits a little bit differently. And this Ole Miss basketball team has announced their arrival on the national scale tonight. They have a game against Mississippi State. It's an absolute free shot now. You got a 1-1 week. A split week is the worst that you can have with Alabama and Mississippi State on the schedule. And at Mississippi State just lost by 20 points to Auburn. If Ole Miss's defense travels, like I think Ole Miss's defense can travel, I think Ole Miss has a good shot down in Humphrey Coliseum. And listen, I understand more than most. It just seems that Mississippi State wins down in Starkville and Ole Miss wins in Oxford. And it doesn't matter how good the teams are. And I think everybody needs to keep that perspective in the back of their mind. But this Ole Miss basketball team and their defense, Ole Miss just held like the best offensive basketball team in the country, averages 91 points per game to 64 points. They almost held that team below 60, continuing that. This team plays some defense, man. They play some real defense. They are hard to basically make a living out on the perimeter. They are really good at collapsing in towards the basket, and they make it hard to operate. Now, is Ole Miss going to lose some games this year? Yeah, probably. It's the SEC. That's going to happen. But this Ole Miss team absolutely can contend for an SEC championship. We heard Dane Bradshaw on the broadcast tonight said the SEC champion is going to be the one that has the best road record likely. Ole Miss has a road win at number 4 Alabama, which they said was the best win in the entire SEC all season. And they have a win on the road at Bud Walton Arena at Arkansas. They have 2 road wins through 4 games. And they have a 3rd road game coming up with Humphrey Coliseum that's going to be potentially another opportunity at a quad 1 level win. Honestly, I cannot say how proud I am of this Ole Miss basketball team and the way they performed tonight. This was a free shot. This was a chance to go in and try and play your best. And if you do that, if you play your best and going through that, whatever happens, happens. Kind of let the cards fall where they may. Well, the cards fell right now, and we saw how good this team could be. If you can win a game at the number 4 team in the country on the road, you can win a game anywhere against anybody, anytime. So when Malik Dia is having interviews after the LSU game and saying, what can you do this season? He's like, this is the Final Four team. And everybody's like, whoa. The Final Four team, that's absolutely nuts. And then all of a sudden this happens and you're like, well, okay.